Okay, thanks. I'd like to call to order regular council meeting number 1517 for Tuesday, June 16th. And in honor of the Liwatul, the Village of Pemberton acknowledges that we are meeting within the unceded territory of the Liwa Nation. Any amendments to the agenda? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make a
Ryan,
motion.
motion approved.
I can see everybody on screen. Let's try and go with hands for the order of things, and that way there's not a whole bunch of voices. So I got Councillor Zant, seconded by Councillor Antonelli. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Adoption of minutes. Can I do all three at once there, Ms. Fraser?
Sure.
Adoption of minutes from regular council meeting 1515 from Tuesday.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. The public hearing minutes just need to be received.
Okay, let's do them one at a time then. Regular council meeting, adoption of regular council meeting minutes from Tuesday, May 26th, moved by Councillor Craddock, seconded by Councillor Noble. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Minutes from special council meeting 1516 from Tuesday, June 9th. Minutes moved by Councillor Sant, seconded by Councillor Craddock. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And a motion to receive the public hearing minutes from zoning amendment bylaw number 883 from Tuesday, May 26th. Moved by Councillor Zant, seconded by Councillor Noble. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Business arising. Rise with the report from in camera. We have a couple reports. So we're going to rise with the Village of Pemberton bursary recipient. At the in-camera council meeting held on May 26, 2020, council reviewed applicant submissions to the Village of Pemberton bursary, which is funding in the amount of $2,000 provided to a graduating student from Pemberton Secondary School residing within the village boundaries. The village is pleased to announce that the 2020 bursary was awarded to Belle Dorgello. And she was very pleased. Big smiles. Mayor's Task Force on COVID-19. At the special in-camera meeting number 1516 held Tuesday, June 9th, council considered membership on the Mayor's Task Force on COVID-19 response and recovery, and the following people have been appointed to this select committee of council. Community members at large are Mr. Rodney Payne, Ms. Jackie Smith, and Ms. Judith Walton. Mental health worker, Ms. Erin Johnson. Financial services professional, Mr. Stuart McConaughey. From our local organizations, Ms. Meredith Kemp from the Pemberton District Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Mark Mendonca from Tourism Pemberton, Jay Russell from Sea to Sky Community Services, and Ms. Natalie Suchak from Work BC. No business arising from committee of the whole, no committee minutes, no delegations. So we'll go to reports and to the office of the CAO. Regarding the Pemberton Economic Development Collaborative request to reinstate BC Rural Dividend Program funding. Ms. Gilmore.
We have put on here today, I'll turn it over to Councillor Craddock as he is on the collaborative, and this was circulated through the collaborative. But I think it's pretty self-explanatory, just a joint letter to the Rural Dividend BC program for funding. Just for council, if you have any comment and if you're willing to support. Councillor Craddock, did you have anything you wanted to add to this?
No, it's just that most of us on the committee don't feel comfortable making the decision without council's input. So that's why it's on the agenda, and I appreciate the introduction from Nikki. And I'll move the motion if there's no discussion.
Okay, seconder for discussion.
Second.
Present. Any further discussion on the motion? Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have anything? Oh yeah, development services. Or do you have anything else, Ms. Gilmore?
No, I don't.
Okay. So development services temporary use permit for 1394 Portage Road for a food truck. And Ms. Reese will be presenting for us today. And I believe Ms. Pedrini is on the line as well. There she is. Hi, everyone. Welcome, Ms. Reese. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Council. The purpose of this report is to present to Council a temporary use permit to allow a food truck at 1394 Portage Road for consideration of approval. The application was submitted on April 29th, 2019 by Pemberton Portage Limited. As per the requirements of the Local Government Act, public notice of this application was published in the Peak News Magazine on Thursday, June 11th. Next, I'll review the temporary use proposal. The subject lands are vacant and are located between the residential neighborhood Tayada and the adjacent commercial lands at 1392 Portage Road, including the Biteco retail store and the Pony restaurant. The applicants are also the owners of 1392 Portage Road. The food truck is proposed to be situated at the rear of the site with 4 picnic tables for seating and a fire-resistant garbage and recycling receptacle. Vehicle access is off Portage Road through the restricted right in, right out only entrance. There is existing signage on Portage Road to direct patrons, indicating no left turns. The proposed site is pedestrian oriented, with the only vehicle accessing the site being the food truck. And to access the subject lands, the food truck will need to use 1392 Portage Road. The lot is delineated with small boulders, preventing vehicle access, and a gravel path is proposed to provide pedestrian access from the sidewalk on Portage Road. The landscape plan includes additional cedar hedges in the rear of the site, adjacent to the neighboring residential lot. The existing plantings and hedges will be retained, and the site will feature self-watering cedar planters to be planted with a hydroseed mix of native grass species. Bark mulch is proposed as a ground cover. However, staff recommend the use of an alternative ground cover to be consistent with Fire Smart principles. The applicants have indicated they've made an agreement with the operators of the Pony restaurant for the use of their washroom facilities. And the applicants have directed that they'll be operating within the same hours as the Pony restaurant and likely on a seasonal basis depending on the weather conditions. So next I'll review the discussion and comment section of the report, outlining the relevant policy to the application. The Local Government Act allows for the designation of temporary use areas in the zoning bylaw, and a temporary use permit may allow for a use not permitted in the zoning bylaw. The Local Government Act allows for a temporary use permit to be issued for a maximum of a 3-year term, with the option to request a one-time renewal for an additional 3-year term. The applicants have requested the temporary use be permitted for the maximum term, and staff support this due to the required investment to establish this use. The subject lands are designated downtown in the official community plan. The downtown designation provides for a diversity of uses that are needed by the greater Pemberton community and visitors, including commercial uses. The proposed food truck is consistent with the OCP downtown designation. As per the Local Government Act, the development permit area guidelines don't apply as a building or structure is not being constructed. Section 7.27 of the zoning bylaw states that a temporary commercial use may be permitted within a commercial zone through a temporary use permit. Additionally, when considering the issuance of a temporary use permit, council shall consider the following: whether the proposed use is consistent with the official community plan designation for the land, whether the proposed use is consistent with any other relevant Village of Pemberton policies. In the case of any proposed use that is not consistent with any such plan or policy, the nature and extent of any community benefit from the use, whether the proposed use is of a temporary nature, or whether it would be more appropriate for the village to consider permitting the use by rezoning, the suitability and compatibility of the proposed use with the surrounding area, including its operation, function, appearance, and intensity of use. And lastly, the impact of the proposed use on the operation of adjacent uses, including future land uses permitted by the zoning bylaw and designated by the official community plan. So in the zoning bylaw, the subject lands are located in Area 1 of the CD5 Comprehensive Development Zone 5, Tayada at Pemberton, which is a mixed use area permitting both residential and commercial uses. However, a food truck is not permitted in this zone, but may be permitted with a temporary use permit. The proposed use is mobile and does not require construction of a building or structure. It will not permanently alter the subject lands. As such, a food truck is considered temporary in nature. The food truck is proposed to be located at the rear of the site to avoid congestion and conflict with pedestrian use along the sidewalk. The landscape plan illustrates that cedar hedging will act as a buffer between the food truck and the neighboring residential lot to ensure compatibility of land uses. The food truck is compatible with the adjacent commercial uses and centrally located in the downtown. To access the subject lands, the food truck will need to use the adjacent commercial lot 1392 Portage Road. Staff have recommended a condition of issuance of the permit be for the applicant to provide written confirmation of access from the neighboring lot. The proposed food truck is expected to have minimal impacts on the operations of adjacent uses. If the permit is issued, the applicant will be required to obtain a mobile vendor business license and provide a Vancouver Coastal Health permit. The village permits up to a maximum of 5 mobile business licenses on an annual basis, and 2 have been issued this year to date. This application was referred to the Advisory Land Use Commission, internal departments, and external agencies. The application was brought to the Advisory Land Use Commission on May 30th, 2019, and the minutes were attached to this report as Appendix B. Staff are satisfied that the applicant has fulfilled the recommendations as applicable. The application has also been reviewed internally, and all comments or concerns have been resolved to the satisfaction of the Development Services Department. And the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure had no objection and indicated they are not prepared to consider changes to the existing right-in and right-out only vehicle access to the site. So in summary, the proposed use is temporary in nature, suitable for the location, compatible with the surrounding land uses, and is expected to have minimal impact on adjacent uses. The proposed temporary use is consistent with the policies of the downtown designation within the Village of Pemberton official community plan and meets the criteria for temporary use permits in the zoning bylaw. At the time of writing this report, 4 letters of support were received by staff, and an additional 5th letter of support was received yesterday. In conclusion, staff recommend that council authorize the issuance of the temporary use permit to permit a food truck to be located at 1394 Portage Road for a period of 3 years, subject to the applicant fulfilling the listed conditions to the satisfaction of the Manager of Development Services. The conditions include that the applicant submits written confirmation of access from the neighboring lot at 1392 Portage Road, that the applicant provides an alternative to the use of bark mulch as a landscaping cover and provides a revised landscaping plan that incorporates fire smart principles, that any landscaping complies with the Village of Pemberton plant list, and lastly, that any outstanding fees be paid by the applicant. So that concludes my overview. Thank you, Council. Please let me know if you have any additional questions.
Thank you, Mr. Reese. Great, clear report as usual. As we've done with these sorts of issues in the past, I would like to suggest with Council's approval that we take questions from Council at this point for staff, and then if Council is amenable, open it up to the public for any comments and then get into debate. Is everybody comfortable with that? Okay, so this time I'll entertain questions for staff on the presentation.
Richmond.
Go ahead. Councillor Zant.
The only question I had was in regards to, within the report, it says the temporary use permit is for 1392 Portage Road. Considering it's a food trailer, will the use permit allow it to move other places within this 3 years? Or is it only for that one spot?
The temporary use permit would just be for that location.
Okay, thank you. That's the only question I had. Thank you.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Councillor Antonelli.
What do you see them using instead of bark mulch?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's something that we'll have to discuss with the applicant, and they'll have to provide a revised plan, and we'll be making sure that whatever they propose is meeting Fire Smart principles.
Thank you.
Oh, okay, I would just suggest that bark mulch is really plentiful and inexpensive locally. So I encourage them, to look at their options, but when they've reviewed all that, bark mulch might still be a decent option. Yeah, so I don't know if I would put that in there.
Any other questions for staff? From
I have
council?
no more questions.
Okay, at this point, we're going to open it up to anybody that's in attendance. If there's anybody on the webinar, if you hit the raise hand button, staff will see that and you'll have the opportunity to speak. Would anybody like to do so?
I don't see any hands up, Mayor Richmond.
Okay, I'll give it a half a sec.
There's one.
Oh, there's one person now.
Let's go ahead then. And I assume we need name and address, Ms. Fraser.
Yes, please.
So could anybody wishing to speak, please provide their name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Jansen, and I'm part of the ownership team for Pemberton Portage.
Thank
And
you.
I don't have any questions that I'd like to give you guys, but if you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask.
Are there any questions for the proponent?
No questions.
Okay. Thank you very much. Is there anybody else with a hand up? Ms. Harvey?
I don't see anyone else. No.
Okay, so now let's open it up for discussion and debate from council on this permit application. Does anybody have any thoughts? Yes, go ahead, Ms. Gilmore.
I did a quick look. I just wanted to address the suggestion for bark mulch, in that there are some suggestions of considering gravel mulch, rock mulch, or a combination of plant mulch and decorative rock mulch to reduce the risk. I think in this area with the walking path, bark mulch can dry out, and with people discarding cigarettes, it can cause fires. And that's one of the reasons in the Fire Smart guidelines. And we actually mentioned this to many developers who come into Pemberton, and in just that we don't encourage the use of bark mulch. So I just wanted to address that particular portion. So there are some alternatives that are discussed out there when you search out alternatives under Fire Smart principles.
Right. Thank you. Okay, any comments or thoughts? So go ahead, Councilor Craddock.
Yeah, Mayor Richmond, I'll move the motion to approve.
Is there a seconder?
Second.
that.
Councilor Noble, is there any further discussion on the application? Hearing none, call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Next up, it's the non-medical recreational cannabis retail policy amendment. Ms. Reese.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The purpose of this report is to introduce an amendment to the non-medical recreational cannabis retail policy to reflect the updated business license bylaw and to remove the policy requirement for a minimum of 2 employees to be on site at all times. The current policy was approved on October 2nd, 2018 to identify the requirements for the sales of recreational cannabis in the village of Pemberton. A letter was written to Mayor and Council from Kostya D., General Manager of GP Cannabis, dated March 6, 2020, requesting that the policy be amended to remove the requirement for a minimum of 2 employees on site at all times. The policy was drafted prior to the legalization of cannabis in 2018. As a result, security and employee safety concerns were heightened due to the unknown nature of introducing retail cannabis stores to the community. The requirement to have 2 employees on site at all times was included by staff as a result of following the lead of other BC municipalities at the time. However, this is not a requirement of all municipalities, for example, the District of Squamish. The policy was approved prior to updating the business license bylaw. The business license bylaw now outlines operational requirements to ensure that cannabis retail businesses are operating securely and safely and does not have a minimum of 2 employees to be on site at all times. Staff have reviewed the request and believe the safety and security requirements from the province and stated in the business license bylaw are sufficient. The draft revised policy is attached as Appendix C to this report, and the revised policy reflects revisions made to update the policy, removing all operational requirements that are already stated in the business license bylaw and deleting the policy requirement for a minimum of 2 employees to be on site at all times. In conclusion, staff recommends that council approves the amended non-medical recreational cannabis retail policy. Thank you.
Thank you again, Ms. Reese. So this is a policy that we put together a while ago with the idea that we would review it when we felt changes or amendments might be necessary. Are there any questions from staff, from council? Comments? Any comments about the amendment?
Mayor Richmond?
Councillor Zant?
I'm just curious in regards to other businesses, do they require 2 employees to be on at all times, or is this specific to the non-cannabis store?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this requirement was specific to cannabis retail.
Okay. Councillor Noble?
I would support the amendment to not require 2 employees. If one's going to be adequate with the level of security that they have, we want to keep these shops viable because the black market hasn't slowed down that much.
Thank you. Would you like to make the motion?
Sure, I'll make the motion.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Craddock, further discussion on the motion? Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And now we're on to the Village, also Development Services Village of Pemberton Plant List 2020. Ms. Reeves, you're a solo act tonight.
Thank you, Mayor. The purpose of this report is to present council with the new Village of Pemberton plant list for consideration of approval. In 2011, following the update of the official community plan, the Village of Pemberton landscape plant list was received by council to replace and supersede the Village Vision tree list. The plant list was used as a reference document to support the policies in the development permit area guidelines. In addition to use by developers, the plant list is also used as a reference document for public landscaping projects and by local gardeners. Recently, staff discovered that the 2011 plant list contains several species that are considered wildlife attractants, and as a result, felt it was critical to review and update the plant list. The plant list has been updated to remove wildlife attractants and provide additional information on invasive species and wildlife attractants based on information provided by Bear Smart Society and the Sea to Sky Invasive Species Council. Additionally, the plant list was reformatted in accordance with the Village of Pemberton Style Guide. In conclusion, staff recommend that council receive the Village of Pemberton plant list June 2020. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Noble.
I have some questions. As a landscaper, I see a lot of plants on here which don't seem like animal attractants to me, like the wild roses, kinnikinnick, and vine maples. And I'm curious why these are all included on the list.
Yeah, through the mayor. So plants that were removed, we looked at both wildlife attractants and invasive species, and some plants were recommended to be removed by local landscapers and local gardeners.
Okay. The 4 that I just mentioned are actually native species and not invasive. So yeah, I find the list rather overzealous. It would be really a shame to, are these plants that are no longer going to be permitted in the Village of Pemberton?
Yes, so when we would receive a new landscape plan for a development application, we'd be reviewing it with this plant list.
I would be opposed to banning all of these. The roses are not an attractant. A bear may eat the odd rose hip, but they are not drawn in by them. And it's really nice having all these beautiful scented native flowers around our community. So I'm wondering if we could have another look at the list.
Okay. Do we want to maybe send the list back with the plants in question that you haven't, that you've mentioned there, Councillor Noble?
Sure.
Before you make that motion, I think Councillor Antonelli has a thought.
Mhm.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that I agree. I think the list is a little of plants to be removed is a little bit random. So I don't believe the dogwoods attract bears. So yeah, I would go back and try to be a little bit more open to some of the native species.
If I may, the dogwoods do attract bears, but only in mass plantings because I've seen them eating them across the street. But an occasional plant isn't a big attractant with those.
So it sounds like we have a few native plants on this list that council would like to explore a little further, maybe have sort of vetted through either conservation and or invasive species. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Do we want to have a motion to which one of those species, or do we just want to? Let's not do a general motion on the whole list because there's a lot on there that belong on there.
Well,
Maybe if you like a little more information, which species would those be?
all the roses, the kinnikinnick, and also the vine maple. The only thing I could see being attracted to that is a squirrel. I don't think we're in too much danger from squirrels.
You go up in Montreal, you'd be surprised.
We're not in Montreal.
Okay, so a motion to have staff review the species listed by Councillor Noble. Moved by Councillor Noble, seconded by Councillor Antonelli. Any further discussion or questions on that direction, Ms. Reese? You good with that direction?
Ms. Pedrini just had something, yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just wondering if we would be able to investigate and remove a few of these without having to bring it back to council? Did you want to see it again? Or could you possibly have a motion where we, review, do a double take on some of these and then it's approved tonight?
Are you comfortable with that, within the motion to have staff review the species you've mentioned and, determine whether or not they belong on the list?
I think we do need to bring it back. Otherwise, how do we know exactly what's been contained? And the motion is to receive what necessarily? Because we're making a motion to bring it back for review, but council won't be able to receive what changes have been made to the document.
Okay, all right.
Mhm.
So we'll go with the original motion. It was set by Councillor Noble, seconded by Councillor Antonelli. Further discussion? Ms. Fraser?
Could I just get clarity on which, I think Councillor Noble referred to roses. Are we talking about?
Particularly the Nootka and the woods rose, the Rosa Nootkana, Rosa woodsia, and the vine maple, Acer circinatum. My Latin's not brushed up. And kinnikinnick, which is Arctostaphylos uva ursi.
Okay. And was there any, the dogwood too, or?
Sure, let's have a look at it. Let's run that through conversation.
Okay, sorry, I just needed to get clarification. Thank you.
Further discussion? Question, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Virginia. Thank you, Ms. Reese. You're released.
Thank you.
Next up, we're going to Recreation Services. It looks like Ms. Burns has joined us. I'm pleased to welcome Ms. Burns. She is going to give us a first quarter report on the Recreation Department. And it's been, you know, pretty much your standard first quarter for a new manager, so probably very little to report again, right?
Thank you, Mayor Richmond.
Go ahead, Ms.
Thank you very much, Mayor and Council. It's a pleasure to be speaking to you again so soon. Hopefully, you've had a chance to review the information that I'm sharing. I think what I wanted to mention is our first quarter, well, we ended up closing March 14th, which impacts that. But the staff reacted really quickly and moved to offering programming online, which was fantastically received by the community. They offered multiple programs for seniors, adults, and children at this time, and they continue to run this month. We've had a little bit of a downturn with children's programs with school starting for the month, but everything else is still being widely received, and we're breaking even, which is the win at this point in time for that operation, that aspect of the operation. I guess the rest of my update is just in regards to what I have been doing since I started on April 27th, which has been working with all of the other.
Christine, can I stop you for just a moment?
Please
Does
do.
council want to finish up the first quarter report and have questions and then move into sort of what's been happening since as far as the COVID-19?
Yeah, I think that's
Just the
good.
two, yeah, okay.
Any questions on the first part of Ms. Burns' presentation on the first quarter report?
No, Mayor Richmond,
Go ahead.
I just wanted to say that I've had a lot of people come up to me and say how happy they were with all the online support and courses. A lot of people that were really appreciative of that, so thank you.
Awesome. Any questions on the first quarter? I can't believe we broke even. That's great news. So believe it or not, that's good stuff. Okay, carry on, Ms. Burns.
Sorry, do we want to have a motion to receive that report?
Yes, please.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Richmond and Council. I appreciate your patience with my newness to the process. I think the information report is just that. It is about what we did, what the staff did upon initial response, as well as what I've been doing since I began with the VOP on April 27th. So I kind of hit the ground running amidst COVID-19, which has always been entertaining. But a lot of what I've been doing is reviewing all of the processes and all of the governing bodies that help inform recreation, from BCRPA, Via Sport to WorkSafe BC, BC CDC, and all of the different aspects that we need to take into consideration to move forward. The one thing that the BCRPA has done in their reopening plan was they took a good hard look at the 4 phases of reopening that the province developed, and then they tried to marry what recreation would look like based on a phased reintroduction to recreation. So I think we are currently phase 2, which means we would be level 2 of recreation, and that would be expanding our programming to outdoors, opening outdoor facilities, modified casual use, obviously, limited access to indoor facilities where we can achieve physical distancing, and then really focusing on trying to get as much outside as we possibly can. At this time, staff has been working extremely diligently to create our COVID-19 safety plan in conjunction with Wendy Olson, and what it would look like for recreation and PCC. We currently, as of May 18th, opened the skate park, as well as all of the Pemberton playgrounds. And then as of June 1st, we followed suit with the nature playground and the spray park. After we did a lot of research around the type of signage that we should have up in order to protect ourselves as a municipality. And then that we are currently working on the rest of that safety plan and how to move forward with accessing indoor aspects of the facility, as well as offering children's programming. I'm happy to say that staff has come up with a fairly robust plan for children's programming for summer, should the community prescribe. We are planning to advertise and launch. None of this is actually in the report because this is literally happening as we speak. We plan to launch registration for those programs as well as adult fitness programs online on Thursday. Fitness will be taking place hopefully 100% outside, assuming the weather cooperates. However, we have secured Great Room A in order to provide those programs, and we can do it physically distanced in there for group fitness. And then the children's programs we plan on offering out of room D. You'll have to excuse me, I am still learning the ABCDs of the facility. And then all of the access is via outside to inside, and we will be limiting indoor access through staffing. And at the same time, we are in the process of solidifying how we can open the fitness facilities. Our goal currently is to offer modified hours starting July 2nd for fitness membership holders at this time. Drop-ins are going to not happen right now. It's not recommended in any way, shape, or form that you just allow random drop-ins for programs or services at this time. However, we have secured our software and we are confident that through a booking process, people with memberships will be able to book one of 5 time slots for an hour in either the fitness center upstairs, room C, which is the studio, and we've currently, in cooperation with the fire department, have had all of the fitness equipment moved down into Great Room B and C, so 2/3 of the Great Hall, which will now be physically distanced cardio space. So that goal is for July 2nd, assuming we get all of our documentation in order and staff all trained on all of the new processes that need to occur, from cleaning to how often and scheduling at the same time. We're currently going to move forward with that with the staff that has remained on since the closure in early March, and we go from there. The other aspect of that is just trying to prep the facility and ensuring that we have the physical barriers in place that are required by WorkSafe now moving forward to ensure physical distancing for staff to be in the facility, as well as all of the things that we need for public to be in the facility, from more hand sanitizer to spray bottles. And we now need to move back to paper towels. So we've had to install paper towel holders in multiple locations of the facility for cleaning purposes of equipment and things like that. New first aid supplies. We've always had first aid, but we've had to create a new first aid plan. So we have at least one respondent in the facility at all times who is comfortable and confident with the new first aid policies for response. And then signage, which includes floor spacers, which will hopefully add a little bit of vibrancy to the facility. And we'll see how that goes. And then I do believe we've conquered it. It's been a bit of a process right now. We're working on waivers for public to be informed, to make sure they let us know they're informed of what their potential risk is through participation, as well as new contracts for contractors and everything like that. I'm sure you may have some questions. Feel free to ask. I did write the report early last week, and things have definitely changed since early last week.
Awesome. Thank you so much and great work. I've got some comments, but I want to open it up to council. Questions and comments. Councillor Craddock.
Yeah, thank you very much. A good report. Thank you. Question is the government coming up with any programs for helping to fund the extra costs for first aid signage, plexiglass, that type of thing?
Through the mayor, we have been working through the EOC. Unfortunately, first aid supplies, we are finding that we can receive subsidies through our EOC for those. However, they are claiming that signage and plexiglass is continuation of services. So the costs for those will have to be incurred through our budget.
Thank you.
Further questions from council?
Mayor Richmond?
Councillor Zant?
A couple of questions about, I was wondering if staff has considered after school care for the students that'll be out of school on June 25th from Signal Hill or Pemberton Secondary. Any programs for them?
Through the mayor, yes, we believe 2 to 3 options a week for school-age children from the age of 4 through 13. So we are moving forward with offering some programs through the facility ourselves, through the VOP, as well as we have a couple of contractors on board to run children's programs as well. We were really hoping, I was really hoping I was going to share that with you this evening. However, we do need to tweak a few things based on some last minute information from contractors today. But we do hope to have the information out to families starting tomorrow, with registration for those opening on Thursday.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
One more question.
Go ahead.
Just in regards to the Rudy's Memorial Park at the airport. I'm just curious if, I know the village maintains that, what I'm wondering is the village owns it, and does that park need to be booked through yourself or some other means through the village?
I can take that one. That is a village-owned park, and it falls under our park use permit. So that would be Wendy Olson, who needs to be in contact. Someone needs to be in contact with them, and then she'll take them through the process.
Right. I've had some comments about people wondering how to get use of the park, and if they can, because it's not. It's actually been getting a lot of traffic, more traffic lately, and I think there's a lot of people that were just trying to figure out if they wanted to book it for an event, how they would go about doing that. So I'll pass that along.
Okay, great. And just so everyone's aware as well, we will have certain protocols. I mean, we've been able to, with our park use permits, so you'll see that the farmers market is actually happening every Fridays as well. And we received plans from Vancouver Coastal Health that they had to follow. So we will have some trying to maintain occupancy loads and everything. So they may not resume 100% as we've seen in the past, but we're trying to make the best that we can to make sure our parks can still be used.
Thank you. That was a great report. Thank you, Christine.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Any other thoughts or questions?
Motion to receive if nobody has any other questions.
Seconder?
I'll second that.
Ms. Burns, thank you very much for the report and for diving in 100%. And please pass on appreciation of the staff. I feel like all of you have pivoted really well under the circumstances, and I feel like you're doing a great job providing whatever we can. And so thanks to all of you. Please pass it on.
I will. Thank you very much for your time and your appreciation. Thank you.
Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. On to the mayor's report. So I've got quite a few meetings to update you on. Buckle up. Going back to May 27th, regional district meeting. I'll try to shoot through this one fairly quickly. We received our yearly auditor's report. There was a conversation around the Olympic Park campsites. I mentioned this in my previous report. There was an application to add 46 campsites. I think it was 23 walk-in and maybe 23 camper or something like that. And so that was brought forward, and it came to the board this past meeting. The RMOW has a number of concerns they'd like to address. So everything from fire, like forest fire danger, grizzly bear, watershed, and other words. So they would like the opportunity to provide more comment before the board looks at it. So that's been deferred. We looked at the retaining wall bylaw that was brought forward for a second time. It's a tool for staff to manage retaining wall sizes, safety versus aesthetics in some of the areas around the regional district. It was given first and second reading, and the public hearing was waived. This was interesting conversation. The Britannia Beach Oceanfront Housing Agreement came forward, and it was adopted in 2019, but this past meeting, it was amended to require, and there was a big conversation on how to make this work well, but that 14 of the units remain rental units, and that the rental prices were limited to, by per square foot, 80% of the average market rental rate in Squamish. And so that was already written into the agreement, but what the conversation led to was it was only written in for the first year when these units went on the market, and then afterwards there was the potential for them to go up according to the provincial rates at which you're able to raise your rent. So it was there was a large conversation to make sure that it limits the rental prices to 80% of the average market rental rate in Squamish in perpetuity. And Squamish was chosen obviously as being the closest rental market nearby. There was a conversation around the TransLink. Like us in our previous council meeting, there was conversation around incorporating some comments, and our comments were brought into this conversation for TransLink's benefit. And I provided everything. I think it was mostly Councillor Antonelli's comments in particular. I provided all those, and those will be incorporated. And just to make sure that all the community's comments were well reflected, the motion was to circle back through the CAOs before the comments are provided back to TransLink. And I'll have a little bit more on TransLink later. There was a discussion around Woodfibre LNG. They've applied for an extension on their environmental assessment. This led to a great deal of conversation. And just to give you guys an idea, these Wednesday, Thursdays, these 2 days of meetings were just shy of 15 hours on Wednesday, Thursday of Zoom meetings. There were some of these conversations went quite a while, and this was one of them. And tried to, we had to separate the conversation between general support of this project to the EA extension and the referral comments that we were asked to provide. So by the time we were said and done this conversation, we said the board decided that they would support the EA extension if there were stronger climate change targets as per the RGS included in the plan and the climate targets that were established by the board last year. That they include the BCHD reduction acts, new requirements, because those have all become, there's a number of new regulatory requirements that have come out in the last while since their original environmental assessment. So a big part of the conversation was including some of those new requirements, and that was the BCHD reduction, the new Fisheries Act requirements. There were comments made, especially from the Squamish and Area D director, about the less than satisfactory level of engagement from Woodfibre LNG with the community. And so there was a request for heightened engagement there, as well as the housing arrangements that they provided are also unsatisfactory. So a lot of caveats. The extension was improved, or the referral, not approved, the referral was supported through the referral comments, with the caveat that all these targets get hit. And then the last caveat we put on it was that the net zero emissions are met by 2050. That get written into their agreement, saying that wood fiber LNG will hit the zero emissions targets by 2050, as it has been laid out for much of industry. And a lot of the conversation came down to, we're looking at the step plan for building. We're looking, these are some strong recommendations, but the discussion was trying to hold all sectors and industries accountable for environmental change and zero emissions. We talked about mutual aid agreements, as we did in our council meeting, between communities. That was passed. There was a response in correspondence from Blackcomb Helicopters. I've talked about this a few times in the past. This is for their heli biking application. We provided comments at Village, we provided comments at the regional district, and they've come back and now removed the Rutherford Trail. All trails are now outside the Pemberton watershed. There was very good First Nation discussion, and they're left with one route only on this plan. So they pared it back a number of times as per the comments made by all of us, and it results in less flights and flight paths, maybe even just one per day, and not over residential areas. So yeah, it was interesting to see that response. I think they've been quite responsive to the concerns that we've all put forward. May 28th, I had the committee of the whole for the SLRD. We had a presentation from the BC Rent Bank, and I believe I mentioned this a number of months ago. I believe it was, anyway, it was a request to bring this presentation to the regional district. And if there's an appetite from council, we can ask for a similar presentation. Basically what the BC Rent Bank is, in a nutshell, is a homeless prevention tool. It's an upstream tool as opposed to a Band-Aid approach. And it's to catch difficult situations before eviction and to provide intervention. So the way the BC Rent Bank works is they provide loans. They're not grants, they're loans for people who are in difficult situations to keep paying their rent. And the criteria is, I won't get into all of it, but it's again meant for, the case that was used as an example in the presentation was I think an older couple where the gentleman lost his job, there was medical issues, and they were setbacks, and these folks were in a position where they were, very close to eviction, and it was a way of catching them upstream and making sure that the eviction didn't happen. And the rent, again, the loan is meant to be repaid. It's not a grant. There's coaching and mediation and advocacy as well provided as part of the assistance. And it's, again, for when there's unexpected financial crisis to intervene at that point. The way it's set up is the funding for this is 80% through the BC Rent Bank and 20% through local money. So that local money, and and there was a couple cases or examples provided around the province. That money can come from developers, credit unions, community organizations, local government, etc. And the way they want to try to get it going is to connect with nonprofits in the corridor and see if there's an appetite through some of these nonprofits to be able to take the lead on the BC Rent Bank. So BC Rent Bank would support a local nonprofit organization to do this work. And then the local nonprofit would, with partnerships, go after that 20% funding. And there was, without going, it was a really interesting presentation. I think it's a wonderful service. And I think there's a lot of potential in our corridor for making this work, again, through nonprofits and other partnerships. So there was some connections made during the meeting, and to gear the person who presented to us to get organized with some of our local nonprofits. So I'm hoping we're going to hear more about this. This program is somewhat, a test. We don't know how long the BC Rent 80% funding will be available. So that's one of the challenges. But the hope is that if we can get a few really good examples set up around the province, that, there'll be they'll show the need for it, and it'll become a permanent part of the province's funding to prevent homelessness. So really interesting. There was discussion around short-term rentals in areas A, B, and C. Again, a very big conversation. Where we came to was an agreement that the best regulatory tools for short-term rentals is a temporary use permit at this point. The temporary use permit doesn't run with title. It could lead to zoning and then run with the title if necessary, but it's a short-term, it's a way of test running whether it's an appropriate use. The temporary use permit criteria directed by the board was to include neighbors' input prior to being provided, the TUP, a good neighbor agreement. I pulled that out of our approach to short-term rentals, and impact on quality of life, safety, and security. And also to open up which buildings are available. You know, there was an interesting conversation around, you know, areas B, especially in A, you know, and some of the creative Airbnbs up there, and how we want to make sure that approach to short-term rentals isn't the same throughout the whole region. There's a big difference between area D, C, A, and B. And the last big point on that was, well, a couple of things: expand the B&B definition in rural areas, and let's have a look at that, was some direction, but also to make enforcement complaint-based only and not proactive, recognizing that there's not the staff capacity or budget to be able to be proactively chasing them all down. So it's a complaint-based approach to that. May 28th, I had the Squamish or Sea to Sky Hospital Regional District meeting. There was a presentation from the hospice group, which was really, really great. They have successfully completed their project. They started taking patients in October of 2019. There's been 30 admissions up to date from the whole corridor. They showed video of the place, and it looks wonderful. I've been down there once. I haven't been down there recently. The landscaping's coming in. It's very welcoming. It's not hospital-like. It's very homey. They've done a wonderful job there. So it was great to hear the presentation. And there was conversation around the fact that perhaps the hospice should be rebranded to represent the whole corridor, including Pemberton. We had a presentation from Vancouver Coastal Health, Karen Olson, who's somebody we speak to regularly with regards to the COVID response, but she was speaking on behalf of the budget. Very quickly, with regards to the hospital district budget, I've mentioned this on a number of occasions. Over the last few years, the board has pushed back on the tendency or the feeling that the board's budget, the budget that came through the taxpayers to the board, was being spent on infrastructure and operations and things for Vancouver Coastal Health that should be operational within that organization, and that we wanted to see our money sort of going towards what we as a board felt are the real health needs of our corridor. Again, every year we get a wish list from VCH asking for funds for a number of very great initiatives, by the way, but some of which we've often felt are more operational. So there was another big conversation around that. Ms. Olson made a good case for many of the requested asks financially. It was everything from renovating the Worcester Trauma Center, more virtual care for rural areas, the Squamish General Hospital generator. So there was a good conversation around that. If you recall, in the previous meeting, I mentioned that we, within the budget, put $200,000 towards the mental health unit. And so, having heard the presentation, the agreement amongst the board was to have our chair, Jen Ford, sort of connect a little bit more with healthcare providers throughout the community or throughout the corridor, and see if there's any other priorities, and bring that information back, review the budget that was, or not the budget, but the asks that were requested, and we'll be making budget decisions at our next meeting. Had a transit committee meeting on June 3rd. It was basically a pandemic update in terms of, status on Route 100. you know, the decrease in fare box, and a look at our current agreement. And there was a lot of discussion that we wanted to move ahead with the feasibility study for Area C to look at local transit, to create an RFP, to go through a process where we could decide and get input from people in terms of what changes, infrastructure, service, Area C residents would like to be able to connect better to the current transit system. And this will impact sort of a look at the agreement as we move forward and look at cost sharing on that. On June 4th, we had we'll call it a tourism meeting. This was a meeting the chiefs of Liwat, Naquatqua, Director Mack was on it, Ms. Gilmore, Ms. Brooksbank, Tourism Pemberton, some other staff from the SLRD. And it was a really good sort of broad meeting about the vision of tourism moving forward. We talked about the fact that this was, you know, a time of change once again, and an opportunity maybe to look at how we invite folks back from an economic level, you know, wanting to make sure tourism is still a strong economic driver here, but also to look at what message we want to send out in terms of things like treading a little more lightly, how we want to invite people back. We had discussions around, you know, sort of no-go and go and no-go spots for different communities. You know, so there was conversation from both chiefs around trespassing and how tourists will come and you know, they'll sometimes, you know, head off on FSRs or into First Nation land or private land and trespass. So trying to find a way to provide a unified message to folks, to welcome them, and also ask them to tread lightly and respectfully and within boundaries. And there was also discussion around unified advocacy to the province for, as we've talked about many times at our table, more resources for all these outdoor assets. I'm getting there, I swear. I had a meeting with Kevin Clark, the PVDD operations manager. We talked a lot about general stuff. We will be seeing the results of the seismic testing for the Miller-Lillooet Dike very shortly, I think next week, which is going to, you know, inform our approach to some of the grant funding and money we want to put to some big project with the diking. Councillor Craddock's reported on these a number of times. We, you know, and we just talked about the relationship with the Pemberton Valley Diking District and the Village of Pemberton, and I think it was a really great conversation. And he talked about the work he's trying to do and how, you know, we were open. I said we were open to providing whatever political advocacy and work that we can do to support them. You know, we talked about some of the requirements he has to go through to build some of the dikes, the statutory right-of-way requirements for funding, you know, the mitigation versus response funding, the seismic requirements. So we talked a lot about that, and I think we've got a very open door now to, if he needs support politically, you know, whether it's UBCM motions or ministers' meetings or any of that sort of advocacy, I think the door's wide open. And he talked a lot about the smaller projects. He felt that there was a bit of a lack of focus over the last few years, perhaps, on some of the smaller projects. And, you know, there's a big focus on some very important projects, but things like the Arn Canal, the Grandmother Slough, the maintenance and things that prevent our nuisance flooding, as we call it, and the more small-term high water events. So he's got a real focus on that, you know, culvert heights. And so he's very, very keen, very motivated, and I'm excited to keep working with him. I think it's great. Had a meeting with the Lower Mainland mayors and Minister Robinson and Premier Horgan. Conference call. Honestly, it was not a lot new there. It was a bit of an update on some of the provincial measures and steps that have been taken. I think I provided you guys with that. But it was an interesting call, and there was similarly, I've had calls with Mr. Wheeler and MLA Sturdy. A lot of the talk on the most recent call was regarding tourism funding. Both the federal and the federal government's looking at, Destination Canada is looking at taking a very large chunk of their budget that normally goes to marketing to international markets and turning it towards domestic travel. And the provincial government Destination BC is looking at a number of measures, and specifically for Sea to Sky corridor. So see what comes of that. Again, closed PEVIS meeting on June 11th. Had the similar rec services update. We approved a funding request for the what was it specifically, Ms. Gilmore? It was for the Secretariat for the Economic Development Collaborative?
Yes,
Secretary position. Do you remember what the figure was? Or
I think it was 4,000. I want it.
It was 2,500.
Was it? Oh, there you go. Thank you.
It was a fairly short meeting. Councillor Zan, anything from the PEVIS meeting you'd like to add?
Nope, nothing off. I think the approving the funds for the secretary was a highlight. But aside from another good recreation department report, it was smooth sailing.
And we're getting close because I'm down to today. We had a meeting today with UBCM regarding transit, and it started with a presentation from TransLink representative and BC Transit, and then went to some conversation between communities and mayors and staff. The first big chunk of the presentation was very well laid out, but basically explained all the lost revenues, all the increased costs, and again, it was well laid out with graphs and showing, you know, the business, how the business model does or doesn't work right now, just like most of our business models right now, and talked about you know, projection and modeling depending on different pandemic scenarios, and how we move forward, how we maintain the level of service that we had pre-pandemic and continue to hopefully get back to a position where we have to grow our level of service. I had to leave partway through the forum. Ms. Gilmore, did you want to add anything to that?
I think what it ended up coming down to, interestingly enough, on the comments portion of the Zoom call, is a lot of the smaller rural communities actually felt as though they were the larger municipalities talking and trying to advocate for their, I mean, they do have a much larger loss, but they've been able to make up some of those losses by reducing services or not having free Sundays or whichever that happens to be. So I did actually make a comment just from the Village of Pemberton saying, we have a very bare bones route as it is. There is no ability for us to scale back any of those types of services to try to break even, if you would say. And so Mayor Richmond asked me to add a comment about advocacy from UBCM to the province for us, the smaller communities. And there were several others that came on and suggested the same. So one of the things they did say we could use moving forward to try to offset some of those costs, as well as they're continuing to advocate to the federal and provincial governments for offsetting the shortfalls, is our reserve that we talked about a couple of years ago. But I did go and have a look at ours, and depending on where we end up at the end of the year, so what it's meant to do is to balance a 3-year budget. And so opening up this year, we had $42,000 in that. Last year we had 92, but because there were operational increases and decreases, about $50,000 went towards that. So I don't know where we ended up at the end of last year. I haven't seen those numbers yet to see if we actually even have any bit of a reserve moving forward. So some other communities who are larger, obviously their reserves are larger, but $42,000 isn't going to get us very far.
Well, you know, it was the same. It was similar to hearing, you know, the support for smaller communities from the province. You know, go into your reserves, your loan, you can borrow back, all that sort of thing. That's great. That works great for the bigger communities that have the capital reserves. And when I started hearing that halfway through the call today about, okay, well, you know, we have some strategies for how you could use your reserves. And I had to chuckle. It was a good thing I was on mute at that point. Really, this is not helpful for us.
Exactly.
And so I'm glad other communities spoke up, and I think we've got to keep pushing on that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Thursday is the first meeting of the Mayor's Task Force, and I'm looking forward to that. And last but not least, we talked about it briefly as we were waiting to open our meeting, but the grad ceremonies this weekend I thought were absolutely awesome, way more than I expected. The procession, the sirens and the fire trucks, and when they arrived at the school and the drums were just pounding, yeah, there was a lot of emotion there. It was really, really great. And then I was in the gym as one family after another came in, and the kid would stand up and face the video, receive their scholarships or whatever it was, certificate, pictures, and off they went. But which was slightly awkward for sure, but it was very personal. Like I thought, like every kid got even actually a little more personal attention than they normally do, albeit to a very small crowd. I think there was 5 of us in there. And then they went off for pictures, and then they went off to their own lunches. But I really, really want to acknowledge the high school staff for the effort they put into making that grad work. The streets were lined with posters, the videos. I'm looking forward to seeing the whole package that the kids will get. That includes, the kids getting the certificates, the approach, all of that. Most importantly, my speech, all of that will be in the package. And so I'm looking forward to seeing what that looks like. But bottom line, I have a number of grads that work for me and that I know well, and chatting with them the last couple of days, concern as a parent and looking at these kids that I'm in front of, I was worried that they're feeling ripped off. I feel like they feel anything but ripped off, that it was a really special ceremony. And again, the staff did a magnificent job putting it together. So I was really pleased to be part of it. It took over 2.5 hours to get every family through the gym. But yeah, and the drums lasted almost the whole time. The drummers went for like 2 hours straight. It was unbelievable. And I guess it was a great atmosphere out on the street. Some great cars. What did your kid drive up in there, Ms. Gilmore? What were you driving?
1969 Dodge Dart.
Oh, excuse me.
Nice.
Ice blue. I was reminded the color ice blue.
Nice. So again, thanks to all those, and it was really great. And that's my last 2 weeks. Any counselors' reports?
I'll try to go quickly. So we had a Tourism Pembina meeting, which I wanted to say thank you to Nikki, or Miss Gilmore and Miss Fraser and Miss Brooksbank for helping me prep for that meeting. Their knowledge was perfect and fantastic, so thank you for that. What did come out of the meeting is that Tourism Pembina will be coming back this year with likely a higher ask than what they did last year. And they will be communicating with the village more, just to get the I's dotted and T's crossed, per se. I did attend a town hall for tourism with Emily Sturdy and other representatives around the province through a Zoom meeting last Thursday. It came out really good. Emily Sturdy is looking for ideas for what, basically he wants to hear from the municipalities and what we can do or what we need from the government. The word is that the NDP are going to have some funds to put back into the municipalities, and they'll be looking for ideas of what to do with those funds. I was going to suggest, if I can, if Ms. Gilmore or Ms. Brooksbank could reach out to Emily Sturdy and find out exactly what those funds would look like, and essentially offer up some ideas for what we've discussed here on council that can help our community through this, through the pandemic. A couple of things that came up. One thing that did come out of the Tourism Pembina meeting that I thought I'd ask about is the signage for RV parking. I think I remember last year there was some signage up, and Tourism Pembina was asking when that would go back up again.
We were actually we had some small sandwich boards last year.
Yes.
We were going to have some more permanent signage put up to indicate where RVs should go. And we have made a note of that as well.
All right, thank you. The cemetery moved ahead with a GoFundMe page for their cemetery enhancement. Trying to get the fence replaced and the columbarium. So hopefully that'll get some traction and get some funds going in there. They did want to say thank you to everybody that's provided funding and donations right at this point. And I think that's about it for me. Thank you very much.
for lack of a chair, is there any other council members who have a report?
Nope, I had no
Oh, there he is.
Sorry, there was my dog was growling at the door, which is not something that happens a lot around here.
Oh,
Sorry, I only missed the last little bit there, Councillor Zan. Any other council reports? All right. Hearing none, we'll move on to bylaws. We have a bylaw for first, second, and third and fourth readings. The Village of Pemberton Bylaw Notice Enforcement Amendment 885-2020. Ms. Harvey.
Actually, Your Worship, I'll be presenting today.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for having me tonight. What we're presenting to Mayor and Council is an amendment to the bylaw notice enforcement bylaw, which was adopted just last month in March. As we were starting to work with the bylaw, we noted a minor typo and reference to business license bylaw number 844/2018. But that bylaw has since been replaced with a new business license bylaw 855/2019. So all of this amendment is simply to update the schedule to reflect reference to the correct bylaw number. It is before you for first, second, third, and fourth reading, as we are permitted to do following the ministerial order, which was issued on May 1st.
Fraser. Any questions?
Move motion.
Second.
Moves motion for first, second, third, and fourth. Councillor Craddock, second by Councillor Zant for their discussion. Call the question, all in favor? Opposed? Carries. Bylaws for fourth and final readings. First one is zoning amendment, Sunstone RTA 1, bylaw 883. There's no report here. Does anybody have any questions?
If there's no questions, I'll make the motion.
Fourth and final move by Councillor Zant, seconded by Councillor Antonelli. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And the last one is fourth and final of Village of Pemberton repeal of downtown enhancement contingency barn parking lot paving authorization bylaw 863, bylaw 888. Ms. Fraser.
As council may recall, in April, we brought forward the rescinding or repeal bylaw for the loan authorization bylaw that was put in place last year. We gave it first, second, and third reading, and then it had to be referred to the ministry, to the inspector of municipalities to receive its approval. Their approval. We have received now the minister or the inspector of municipalities approval to repeal this loan authorization bylaw, and the bylaw is before you for fourth and final reading. This will remove the bylaw from, or the loan authorization request from our financial obligations, and will free up our borrowing
capacity.
Yes, I think that's the right word I'm looking for. Yes.
Awesome, thank you. Any questions? Somebody like to move fourth and final?
I'll move it.
Noble, seconded by Councillor Craddock for their discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Fraser.
Thank you.
Correspondence for action, we have none. Correspondence for information, we have none. I think that's the first time I've ever seen that.
Mhm.
That's unbelievable. Decision on late business, notice of motion, and question period. Do we have any attendees that would like to ask a question? Ms. Harvey, is anybody?
I only see one attendee and I don't see anyone's hand up, so I think that's a no.
I'll give it a couple more seconds in case you're looking for the button. All right. Seeing none, I will get a motion to close the public meeting and go in camera.
The motion.
Noble, second by Councillor Zant. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Do we?
All right, we are recording and we are back online.
Okay, thank you. We're back open, and Madam Cameron, nothing to rise in with report. Can I get a motion to adjourn the regular council meeting?
A motion.
Councilor Noble, second by Councilor Antonelli. All in favor? Opposed? We're adjourned. Thanks, everybody. Great job.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Good night,
Bye.
everybody.
Good week.
All right,
Night.
good night. You too.